mentioned, the majority of the book is stories of my life, but I also had a chance to meet some really amazing people with atypical brains, and so this next section is about one of them. So this is about somebody named Rosie and her remarkable family. And at this point in the story, Rosie has been born and she's been growing. She's about 2 years old, and her mom, Terry, has just noticed something. I knew something was wrong, Terry told me. But to convince the pediatrician that there was something wrong was just as bad. A nurse by training, Terry always arrived at the pediatrician's office on time, hoping to get an explanation for Rosie's troubling behavior. But after waiting in a room full of coughing toddlers and children, she would always leave a few hours later with reassurances that Rosie would be just fine. Oh, she's in a big family. That's probably why she's not talking much. Rather than taking comfort in such reassurances, Terry found them unsettling. She knew there had to be someone out there who would listen more carefully to her concerns about Rosie. The pediatrician wasn't being careless. The diagnostic red flags that would now almost undoubtedly catch her attention were not readily available at the time. With no other options, Terry turned to the internet, which in 1999 held only a sparse archipelagos of information. But her online searches turned up the same word again and again: autism. After a year of Terry's persistent pushing, Rosie, now 4 years old, and unable to mutter a single syllable, finally arrived at an ARENA assessment, an evaluation of sensory and motor functions. Without the benefit of blood tests or brain scans that can provide a definitive diagnosis, ARENA assessments were designed to emphasize observation of behavioral nuances by multiple clinicians. It had taken a year to get the appointment at their local children's hospital. Terry came in on her 40th birthday. Hours went by as Terry struggled to keep Rosie under control, while a team of specialists, a speech pathologist, an occupational therapist, a medical education specialist, a social worker, a child psychiatrist, and a developmental pediatrician took turns observing Rosie. Too many names and faces for Terry to recall, but the last 10 minutes of the assessment remain far too clear in her memory. Terry will never forget this moment. Sadly, neither will Rosie. Under the pressure of their collective gaze, they brought down their judgment. Your child has autism. Then there was silence. Terry waited patiently. While this did finally provide a concrete diagnosis for her and Rosie, she had already come to this conclusion on her own and was surprisingly no longer bothered by this now familiar word. But what came after continues to sting. She's going to be your child for life, and she is nonverbal, profoundly developmentally delayed, and profoundly mentally retarded. She's never going to achieve what you might have hoped for. I'm not really a crier, Terry confessed, but I was crying. She labored her way back through the children's hospital, past endless murals of simpering celestial bodies, tigers with Cheshire grins. Standing in the crowded parking garage, she struggled to get the keys in her car door. She sat in the driver's seat, with Rosie on her lap, the jagged set of keys clutched tightly in her right hand, digging deep against her palm. She dragged her head forward over the stitched leather steering wheel and came undone. Certainly, she thought, these specialists had seen so many cases that by now they could see her future so clearly. Perhaps it was their place, their responsibility, to bring right up against her face the vision of a future that she thought would resemble hope, but instead only promised despair. Terry drove home defeated, repeating over and over again the words: profoundly developmentally delayed, profoundly mentally retarded, profoundly nonverbal, never. As she sat at the kitchen table, clutching her rosary, she tried not to settle into the cursed narrative of a cursed mother with a cursed child. She would have easily slipped into that darkness forever, she told me, if she hadn't noticed behind her the sound of a wet, metallic clunk, followed after a pause by another heavy clunk, and then another. Terry slowly raised her head. Rosie was standing atop oversized juice cans that Terry had left on the kitchen floor. One after another, Rosie had stacked together 6 cans to form a small set of cylindrical stairs, which terminated a few feet below the lip of the kitchen counter. To Terry's surprise, Rosie was hoisting her right leg onto the counter, precariously balancing on a wobbly can, her small left foot gracefully on point. Before Terry could reach out to grab Rosie, a voice entered her mind. The voice reverberated with all the maternal force of Shakti, the primordial, great divine mother, and told her to wait, to surrender, if even for a second, and let Rosie climb. She remembered thinking at that moment, exactly who am I trying to fool here? This is the girl that even though she is nonverbal climbs up cabinets. This is the girl that even though she was supposed to be profoundly mentally retarded, is thinking. She is problem solving. This is the girl who saw me open the windows over 100 times and figure out every step she needed to take to get out the window. She pulls the windows open herself. She can't tell me she's that profoundly developmentally delayed, right? She has obstacles, absolutely. But this does not have to reflect who she is as a person. Everybody can have a bad test day, right? Just because doctors fail their boards one day, does that mean they're not going to be great doctors the rest of their life? Absolutely not. Today, we failed the test. That does not mean we will fail every day thereafter. Terry wiped her face with her sleeve and walked over to Rosie. She lifted up her daughter, bare feet, tousled hair and all, and simply held her close against her chest. We're going to work on this, Rosie. We're going to do this. That's the end of that section.